right, neighbors, enough about real estate. Let's get to grilling. Hey neighbors, great to see you again and thank you for tuning in. This month I'm going to show you how to make pork back ribs using the 3-2-1 method. Now pork back ribs, pork loin ribs, baby back ribs, it's all the exact same cut. And the only thing that makes one a little bit different than the other is basically the length of the bone. Where baby back ribs are anywhere from 3 to 6 inches long, generally pork back ribs are going to be just a little bit longer. We're going to do the 3-2-1 method on these ribs, which is highly regarded by many barbecue chefs as the best way to cook pork ribs, but let's go ahead and get right to it. Everybody, I'm going to be showing you how to make these ribs for a backyard barbecue of mine. Now for a competition barbecue, generally you'd have to do a lot of trimming. You'd have to get rid of these little pieces of fat, as well as that nice little piece of meat that's right on the top of the ribs there. These little ribs on the end you would normally cut off. They're a little bit thinner than this thick part of the rack here, as you can see. But we're going to go ahead and cook this for a backyard barbecue. And as you can see, these little pieces of fat right here, these are just going to get nice and crispy, kind of help baste the ribs as we go, give it a little bit of texture. And also it'll protect the meat as that kind of starts to char a little bit. So for our backyard barbecue, basically I'm not going to trim these at all. I want to keep it all in there. But the one thing that you do need to do, once you flip these over here, you'll see there's a little bit of a membrane right on the back side of those bones. You're going to want to take this off, everybody. It's not very pleasant to eat, and it kind of, messes up the texture of your whole ribs there. To do this, what you're going to need is a butter knife and a paper towel. You just kind of find one of the bones. I'm going to start in the middle of the rack here. You slide that butter knife right on top of the bone and underneath that membrane, and you're going to go about halfway up the rib here. At that point, just use the knife to kind of pry that skin up, or that membrane up, as you can see as I'm doing right now. Then what you're going to do is get your paper towel here. All right. We're going to get a hold of that membrane with the paper towel. And at this point, these will pull right off the ribs. You got to go ahead and put a little elbow grease in there. But as you can see, these will come right off once you get a good grip there. By doing this, you're going to make these ribs much more tender and a lot easier to cut as well. So to season the meat, we're basically going to do 2 different layers of seasoning here. The first is going to be a base coat of celery seed as well as Larry's seasoned salt. Now, I've got a little bit of an editing issue here, but you've got to hold these shakers up nice and high. And what that'll do is kind of help the product to spread down over your meat and really help to evenly season that. As you can see, I'm seasoning the bone side as well as the meat side. And of course, you're not going to eat the bone, but it's going to get all over your fingers and it's going to taste nice and delicious. All right. We'll do the same thing with the seasoned salt. Again, you can't see the shaker, but you can see it's coming down there. Hold it up nice and high to give us that nice even spread over the top of the meat here. Let's flip it on over and get the other side. Now don't go nuts with this seasoned salt, everybody, because we are going to salt it with our second layer of seasoning as well. You just want to get a little dusting of seasoned salt on those ribs. Okay, for that top layer of flavor, I like to do equal parts natural sea salt, freshly cracked black pepper, and you can use less sea salt on this round because you already hit it with a little bit of Larry's seasoned salt and you don't want it to be overly salty. But then we're also going to do some onion powder, a little bit of garlic powder, and of course, brown sugar. All right, so I just mixed these up in a bowl. I probably went a little bit heavy on the brown sugar. But at that point, I like to just use my hands here to spread this out. Your hands are your best kitchen tool. By doing it this way, you can ensure that you get the seasoning nice and evenly spread. I'll speed this up here for you a little bit. But you want to make sure you get the whole thing. Make sure you get all those ends. Make sure you get all the sides. And don't be afraid to go ahead and coat that pretty good, everybody. All right, we'll speed this up a little bit more. After you get a nice coat, just rub it down just a little bit, everybody. Make sure that seasoning gets down into those grooves real nice. All right. And then one other tip for you. I like to use one of these baking racks right here because then I can catch my seasonings underneath. That is, if the tray isn't too wet. Don't forget to flip these over and get that bone side there. All right, let's go ahead and speed this up a little bit. Now you don't need as much seasoning on the bones, but definitely give it some. All right, and again, rub it down one more time. And I've got a little bit left here in the bowl. Let's just go on ahead and make sure we can fill in and get any bare spots or thin spots. All right, and these are pretty much ready for the smoker. Okay, so now comes the 3-2-1 part. So for the first part of the cooking process, we're going to go ahead and throw these on the smoker, uncovered, and we're going to let that smoke slow and low for about 3 hours. And if you have an electric smoker, go about as low as you can. Mine cooks at anywhere between 200 to 225 at its lowest point, which is just about right for this cooking method. All right, but I'm going to go ahead and set these right in the middle of the smoker. And we're good for about 3 hours. Okay, so these are smoked for about 3 hours. We're going to get this ready for the next part of the process here. You're going to need a little bit of aluminum foil and butter or margarine. All right, I like to use this Parquet spreadable margarine. You can use butter if you like, but margarine doesn't have any dairy to it, so it won't curdle or burn while it's in there on the smoker. So I really like to use margarine for that. But go ahead and spread some margarine out over the foil, over an area about the same length as one of your racks of ribs there. From there, you're going to take a bunch of brown sugar and spread that over the top of the margarine. And this is really going to help to create a nice candy layer over your ribs while those are in the smoker. Let's get a little more in there. Afraid to get a good layer of brown sugar in there, everybody. Okay, we're just going to take one of those racks of ribs. You're going to put it face down, right on top of that brown sugar and margarine, and then get you a little bit of barbecue sauce. This is my own house-made barbecue sauce. Feel free to use your own. Mine's delicious. If you would like to try it, there's a recipe on the channel, everybody. Going to spread a little bit of that in there. All right, and then you're going to wrap this thing kind of like a burrito. Okay, now that barbecue sauce is going to sit there and kind of help steam those ribs a little bit. So I'm going to do one more layer of foil. All right. At this point, they'll go back in the smoker for 2 hours. And put them bone side down. And last phase, we're going to unwrap the foil. As you can see, they're all nice and wrapped tight. We're going to unwrap that foil, put them back on exposed, glaze them with a little bit of barbecue sauce, and let them go for that last hour. Let's go ahead and unwrap these ribs. Be careful, these are nice and hot. So we'll unwrap these, and we're going to put them on the grill for half an hour with the meat side down, because we want to pick up some of that grill texture. And then we're going to flip them over and do them bone side down for half an hour. And that's when we're going to go ahead and glaze the ribs with a little bit of barbecue sauce and let that set. Ooh, these are already kind of tender, everybody. Got to be real careful not to let those fall apart. Right there in the middle, you can see right in here, that's just a little thin, and so I just got to really be gentle there to make sure that I don't tear this rack in half before it's ready. Nice and warm. Like I said, please be careful. I'm used to handling hot food a little bit, so the temperature doesn't bother me as much, so I'm just warning you ahead of time. If you've got delicate hands, be careful, everybody. So we've done this 3 hours we've done these 3 hours exposed, 2 hours in foil, and now we're doing the last one exposed. We're gonna put the meat side down, bones up. We wanna get a little bit of those marks and texture from the grill on that meat side. And then we'll flip this over after a half hour and glaze it with a little bit of barbecue sauce. I am gonna hit this bone side with just a touch of barbecue sauce as well. So you don't need a ton of barbecue sauce on these bones, just a little bit. And this is my own personal Ball Crooner Especial, house-made barbecue sauce. I feel like my barbecue sauce is the best, to be completely honest with you. Most people that have tried it would say the same thing. It's nice and spicy, nice and peppery and rich, a little sweet, a little sassy, kind of like myself. So recipe for it on Cribs and Ribs. All right, so these have been bone side up in here for about a half hour. And again, we're on the last 1 hour of our 3-2-1 process. We're just gonna go the last 30 minutes, and I can see these are starting to look great. You can see the meat is pulling back from the bones, which is just what we want. All right, it feels just about right. We're gonna go ahead and hit this with a little bit of barbecue sauce and let that glaze for a minute. Oh man, these are gonna be spectacular ribs, neighbors. If you have any questions about the 3-2-1 method, then there's lots of different types of variations you can do here to these ribs. I can show you a few in maybe some future videos, but this is a classic barbecue staple here. This is really the way the champs do it. But if you have any questions about the 3-2-1 method or anything like that, go ahead and give me a call, text, or email, and we'll chat about it soon. Now, even after this last half hour, I'm going to temp these things. We want these to come out somewhere between 195, about 195. That's what I want that at before I take that out of the oven and let it rest. Okay, so I just temp these, and they're coming in at about 190 right now. So at this point, I'm just going to cover it in foil and let it get the rest of the way. It should take about 15 minutes to rest. All right, and you can see there's a little give there. All right, it's time to slice into this rack. Just as I feared, that one with the thin middle there did kind of come apart there, but that's all right. But we're gonna go ahead and slice right down in between the bones there. So you can see these come apart pretty easy. Oops, maybe I spoke too soon there. You can see a nice smoke ring on that rib, nice and tender to the touch. We'll see. All right, I'll feed this to the family and we'll see what we're working with. Everybody, that's enough of me talking. Let's go ahead and leave it to the experts. This is my wife and half of my kids, my son Eli and my daughter Avery. Hi. We're gonna go ahead and let them taste these ribs and they can tell you all about them. All right, let's see what you think.
All right. Meat is very tender and very, very flavorful.
It's very juicy. It's got a kick.
Very juicy and tender and very delicious. I'll probably get a 10 out of 10 on that one.
You hear that, everybody? That's a 10 out of 10 from an expert right here. Everybody, if you like this content, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that bell. You don't want to miss anything spicy. And if you live in West Wind, Waterfall, or Prescott Park, and you're thinking about selling or perhaps even picking up an investment property, I'm the guy to call. Think of Steve Wickett. Either call, text, or email, and we'll chat soon.
Bye.